I'm Maria Shoemaker, and I'll be talking about the history of theater. Theater started with Greek theater, which started as early as the 8th century BC. Tragedies and comedies were first seen in Athens at annual festivals honoring Dionysus. A competition for dramas was created, and the winning playwright was decided by a group of citizens. There was only one comedy playwright, Aristophanes, who focused on satire. One focus of him was the Peloponnesian War because it was so destructive for Athenians. The chorus was a crucial part of the Greek plays as a character, narrator, and ideal speculator, or as a way of setting the mood. Audiences in Greek theater were active, vocal, and responsive. Most of Greek theater used the thrust theater configuration. So during Greek theater, it was mostly used as a form of entertainment since they were performed at the festivals. And those festivals were just focused on having fun and hanging out with people. But even though there was competitions held, playwriting did not become a profession until later on. In Roman theater, they copied many of the structures and plots of Greek theater, but they decided that the chorus was not as important in their plays. They really weren't as into theater, and they transitioned into doing paratheatricals, which included chariot racing, gladiatorial combats, and animal fighting over the common theater type of entertainment. So their performances aren't studied as much today. Some of the Greek and Roman playwrights include Thespis, who was the first Greek actor, playwright, and founder of tragedies; Aeschylus, who wrote about 80 plays, including Oresteia and Prometheus Bound, and he introduced a second actor and called for exuberant spectacle. Sophocles wrote about 120 plays, including Oedipus Rex and Antigone, and won 24 contests at the annual festivals. When he introduced the third actor, he fixed the Greek chorus and invented scene painting. Euripides wrote 90 plays, including the Bacchae and Medea. Aristophanes is the only known Greek comedy playwright, and he wrote about 40 plays, including The Birds and the Frog. Livius Andronicus was the first Roman playwright. Plautus was a comedic playwright. Terence was a comedic dramatist, a Roman comedic dramatist, and Seneca was a first century author of Hercules and tragedies. Once the medieval times started, religion became a huge part of everyday life, and that also included theater. Culture was so deeply based in Catholicism that the main genre of theater during this time was religious drama. This began with performances of biblical stories outside of Mass, and morphed into the anonymous dramas of mystery plays. The other two categories of plays during this time were morality and miracle plays about the lives of saints. Herodes was the first known female dramatist and playwright of the post-classical era. The later medieval period brought on some religious conflicts. As conflicts arose in the late Middle Ages, many rulers began the showing of plays based in religion to not push the boundary further. This cleared the way for a more meaningful form of theater, sometimes known as the Golden Age. So the Italian and English Renaissance was most known for William Shakespeare. Many of his plays were very well known, including Hamlet, Macbeth, and Romeo and Juliet. Popular form of theater called commedia dell'arte developed partly from the stock characters of Roman comedy. Invention of the printing press allowed for ideas to be spread farther and farther, so it helps theater spread during this period. And William Shakespeare and other authors included a range of different styles of writing and production during this time. Along with William Shakespeare, Thomas Kidd started popular revenge tragedies such as the Spanish tragedy, and Christopher Marlowe perfected blank verse and had complex characters with episodic plots like Dr. Faustus, the Jew of Malta, and Edward II. This brought us into French neoclassicism. In France, the government recognized the benefits of controlling theater. So during the early 17th century, the French Academy was formed to control the French culture. The play The Cid was very controversial and was censored by the Academy because of its popularity, and they wanted to make sure everyone believed what they wanted them to believe. Neoclassicism started a period where plays had a basis in the truth. Many times they included reality, universality, and morality, which could be applied to real people during that time. It also made sure that good was rewarded and evil was not. And this encouraged people to have a good morality in their life. During this period, the theater advocated three unities of time, place, and action. Around the same time, English Restoration drama began, and it was named for the restoration of the line of King Charles to the throne after 20 years of Puritan control. During this time, it was a pretty big deal that women were allowed on stage, and unfortunately, plays shifted to having more breeches roles and rape scenes. William Wycherley and William Congreve wrote the theater form of the Comedy of the Matters, which also occurred during this time. And then Italian staging created depth of the stage and was also brought to England during this period. As we got into the Industrial Revolution, a new form became apparent, which was melodrama. Melodrama means music drama, and it was a way to escape the social problems of the Industrial Revolution, which included poor working conditions and poor living conditions. These type of plays had a two-dimensional stock characters such as the villain, the hero, and the heroine. And in more cases than not, the hero won. These plays included special effects, narrow escapes, and suspense. Gaubert de Persicourt in France and Dion Porchidal in Ireland were two of the most influential writers of this style. Because the style was a little bit unrealistic, it had some challengers, which those challengers eventually formed realism. Charles Darwin's theories on evolution, Sigmund Freud's investigation of psychological sciences, and Auguste Comte's studies of sociology led to people thinking in a more realistic style. The scientific method was applied to art and theater to improve social conditions. Themes of these plays were of the contemporary world that most people could observe. Like I said, realism was a backfire against the unrealistic approach to fixing social issues in the melodramas. They also had a lack of heroes, villains, and many of them did not have happy endings. Popular playwrights of this period included Ibsen, Anton Chekhov, and Bernard Shaw. Many other forms of realism arose, including symbolism, which began in the year 1885. Like the name suggests, these plays stress the use of symbols to resemble the truth. Plays were set in the past or in the world of fantasy, and they sort of challenged realism, but they weren't super influential. Another form was expressionism. This appeared around 1910 in Germany. These people wanted to reshape the human spirit that they thought was harmed by external forces, such as materialism. These plays had very generalized characters and essential message-themed plot. Fantasy and magic were used readily with the effect of being of allegory clothed in nightmare. Influential playwrights of this type of play included George Casier, Ernest Toller, Eugene O'Neill, Elmer Rice, and Sophie Treadwell. Two other forms were Dadaism and Futurism. These two were radical in some ideas, but weren't very specific about what they were talking about. Sometimes it seemed that they just wanted to be against the authority and institutions. Futurists compressed plays written by other people or historically into just a few lines. We're told Brecht created an alienation effect with both distance and reeled in the audience in the same play to create more analytical audience member. His popular plays included Mother Courage and Her Children and The Caucasian Chalk Circle. The last form of realism was absurdism. This developed in France in the mid-20th century from movements like Dadaism and Surrealism. Participants in this movement challenged the chaos of the world caused by the Holocaust, World War II, and weapons of mass destruction. To them, the world was a meaningless place, and governments could not fix anything, so people had to have their own morals. Characters in these plays were trapped in an illogical world and the plays didn't have really a true plot, kind of just circled around. But popularity was gained a lot because Nobel Prize-winning playwright Samuel Beckett authored the play Waiting for the Godot. Other writers during this period included Jean Genet, Eugene Ionesco, and Edward Albee. All of these forms of realism basically just all had the common goal of getting to the truth and fighting against common beliefs and authority. Lastly, we have postmodernism. The gap between realism and things like that to postmodern drama was bridged by Samuel Beckett. These plays have a non-linear narrative and are open-ended for the audience to interpret. The multiple meanings of these plays mold together to reject the mainstream form of realism, and these plays prompted many minority groups to form avant-garde movements to try and change the status quo in the world. Popular playwrights of this period include Heiner Moeller, who authored the play Hamlet Machine. I think that for people deeply involved in theater, these may have a stronger effect, but because there isn't a large percentage of people who actually see a play each year, let alone a more controversial play, they aren't having as big of an effect.